back to auto trader machines. In the mid-1970s, American roads were a canvas of style, steel, and statement. It was an era defined by chrome, boxy frames, and the slow rumble of V8 engines beneath long hoods. And nestled among the giants of that time was a car that rarely got the spotlight it truly deserved, either the 1976 Oldsmobile Omega. Today, we're going back in time, not just to look at what the Omega was, but to understand why it mattered, what made it different, and how it became a quiet symbol of Oldsmobile's attempt to capture a changing market. The 1976 Omega marked the final year of the first generation of this compact model. It wasn't exactly a revolutionary car, and perhaps that's what made it so interesting. It didn't scream for attention. Instead, it nodded toward tradition with just a hint of modern ambition. Built on General Motors' X-body platform, the same used by the Chevrolet Nova, Pontiac Ventura, and Buick Apollo, the Omega was Oldsmobile's response to the growing demand for smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicles in an age increasingly concerned with gas mileage and emissions. But Oldsmobile had a unique approach to the compact formula. It gave the Omega a bit more class. From the outside, the 1976 Omega carried a design that was unmistakably 70s. Its squared-off lines, upright stance, and subtle Oldsmobile touches gave it a dignified look compared to its X-body siblings. The most distinctive feature was the front end, where a traditional Oldsmobile split grille and vertical headlight arrangement gave it a more upscale appearance than the Nova's simpler facade. Chrome was used generously but tastefully on the bumpers, window surrounds, and side trim. And depending on the trim package, the Omega could be dressed up with vinyl roof treatments, wheel covers, and color-keyed striping that added an extra level of style for buyers who didn't want their compact car to feel plain. Under the hood, the Omega offered a range of engine options. The base models came with a 250 cubic inch inline six, which delivered modest performance but decent fuel economy for the time. For those who wanted more punch, Oldsmobile offered two V8 options of the 260 and 350 cubic inch engines. The 260 V8 was particularly noteworthy because it was the first application of Oldsmobile's new lightweight V8 design, tailored to meet new federal emissions regulations and fuel economy standards. Though it produced just around 110 horsepower, it represented the brand's effort to evolve with the times, balancing performance with the demands of efficiency. Driving the 1976 Omega was a surprisingly smooth experience, especially for a car of its size. Thanks to its solid build and rear-wheel drive layout, it handled confidently on the road. Steering was light, typical of American cars of the era, and the ride was tuned more for comfort than precision. But that was the point. The Omega wasn't trying to be a sports car. It was a compact luxury cruiser, offering features like air conditioning, power steering, power brakes, and even an AM/FM stereo, which in the 70s, was still something of a luxury. Inside, the Omega did its best to elevate the compact car experience. Bucket seats were available, but most models featured a plush bench seat that could comfortably fit three across. Materials ranged from vinyl to optional cloth, and depending on how the car was optioned, the dashboard featured either basic instruments or wood grain trim with chrome accents. The layout was clean and driver-friendly, and like most Oldsmobiles of the time, it had a no-nonsense feel with just a touch of sophistication. One of the more unique aspects of the 1976 model year was its timing. That year marked the final stretch before GM overhauled the X-body platform for the 1977 model year. As a result, the 76 Omega stands as a kind of bridge between the older muscle car era and the more fuel-conscious late 70s and early 80s. It's a snapshot of a moment when automakers were still trying to figure out what a compact car should be in a post-oil crisis world. Notably, the name Omega itself carried some weight. It symbolized the end in the Greek alphabet, and while Oldsmobile likely intended it as a nod to a sleek, forward-looking car, It's hard not to see the irony in retrospect. The Omega was introduced in 1973 and ran through 1984, and though it saw multiple redesigns, it never quite found the popularity of the Nova or even the Ventura. Still, in 1976, the Omega was carving out its niche, quietly dependable, modestly stylish, and offering buyers a touch of Oldsmobile refinement in an affordable package. Today, the 1976 Omega is something of a rarity. You don't see many of them at car shows or in collectors' garages, and that's a shame. Because in many ways, it represents the everyday classic of the kind of car that people grew up with, took to work, packed the kids into for weekend trips. It wasn't flashy, but it had heart. It was the kind of car that stuck around, even if no one wrote songs about it. And in a time when muscle cars and exotics often steal the spotlight, the Omega reminds us that there's value in the cars that simply did their job and did it well. One of the more charming aspects of the Omega was the variety of trims and options available. Buyers could opt for the base model if they just needed a simple, affordable ride, or they could step up to the Omega Brougham, which added a bit more flair, like a more refined interior, additional sound insulation, and upgraded exterior trim. These touches didn't necessarily make the Omega a luxury car, but they made it feel a bit more polished compared to its competition. It was a clever strategy by Oldsmobile, offering just enough comfort and style to pull buyers away from the Nova or Ventura without breaking the bank. Another interesting detail is how the Omega fit into the broader Oldsmobile lineup. At the time, Oldsmobile was known for cars like the Cutlass Supreme, which was America's best-selling car through much of the 70s. The Omega was never intended to rival the Cutlass in popularity or prestige. Instead, it offered a stepping stone away for younger buyers or those looking to downsize to still experience Oldsmobile quality. And with the uncertainty surrounding fuel prices and emissions regulations, more and more people were beginning to appreciate compact, efficient vehicles, even if they weren't particularly exciting. In terms of collectability, the 1976 Omega hasn't seen the same kind of resurgence as other classics from the era, but that might be part of its appeal. For enthusiasts looking to restore or drive something different, or something that stands out not for its flash, but for its authenticity, the Omega is a hidden gem. Parts are still relatively easy to come by thanks to its shared GM underpinnings, and because it was never a high-performance machine, most surviving examples haven't been abused. That makes them great candidates for preservation or restoration. What really makes the Omega stand out, though, is the human story behind it. This was the car for the teacher, the small business owner, the middle-class family. It wasn't about horsepower figures or 0 to 60 times. It was about getting from point A to point B reliably and comfortably, and maybe that's why it deserves a second look today. In an age of tech-heavy, sensor-laden vehicles, there's something refreshing about a car that's mechanical, analog, and honest. Imagine starting one up today. The low growler of an old V8 coming to life, the smell of fuel and aged vinyl, the feel of a steering wheel that's actually connected to the road. You don't need Bluetooth or touch screens to enjoy a drive. You just need a car with character, and the 1976 Oldsmobile Omega has that in spades. Whether you're looking at it as a collector, a restorer, or just a fan of classic American iron, the Omega is worth your time. It's a car that never tried to be the best but ended up being remembered by those who drove it as something close to perfect for its time. So if you ever come across one, whether in a junkyard, a backroad barn, or a Craigslist ad, take a second look. You might just find a piece of forgotten American history waiting to roar again. The Omega may not have been a superstar, but it was the kind of car that helped shape everyday life in the 70s. And sometimes, those are the vehicles that tell the richest stories.